Hi, my name is Jamie Dominic, and my first experience with race is something that I won't soon forget. My parents divorced when I was about 8 years old, and my father, who raised both myself and my sister, had to then take on some responsibilities that maybe a father wouldn't have otherwise. And I remember that he was taking us to the doctor for school physicals, and my grandmother was in town to help with that process. We had never been to this particular doctor before, and so my father went in before us to make sure that we were in the right place. And I remember my grandmother saying, "Oh, that's so disgusting." And I was like, what was disgusting? I was looking around, I didn't see anything gross. And she said, "That baby is mulatto." And I said, what does that mean? I didn't know what that meant. Some history to that story is that I grew up in a very, very small town in Lolo, Montana, with nothing but white people, white teachers, white churches showing images of a white Jesus and white disciples. And so everything was very, very white. And I remember when that happened, I said to my grandmother, because I just couldn't believe it, I said, at 8 or 9 years old, I said, "I am going to marry someone outside of my race just to piss you off." And I remember my grandmother saying, oh my gosh, she was beside herself. She did not speak to me for days. My father got back in the car and said we're in the right place, and we went and got physicals like nothing had ever happened. And that is really what sparked a curiosity for me, because there was no other races in my town. There was not conversations about race. And so that was my first encounter with something that maybe was different or something that I didn't know about. And so I kind of set out to learn more. I became pretty curious at a very young age about different ethnicities and different cultures. Fast forward several years, I could not wait to get out of that small town. And right out of high school at 18 years old, I moved to temporarily to Virginia as a nanny, which, much to my surprise and dismay, was a very, very segregated place where the family told me that I was absolutely under no circumstances allowed to have any friends other than white friends, because that would be an embarrassment to the family. Needless to say, that job lasted about 2 months and I went home. From there I moved to Chicago, which is extremely diverse, but also extremely segregated. And I tended to just fall into groups of people that didn't look like me. And that was where I felt comfortable. That was where I felt myself learning and growing in my understanding of other people. And fast forward to my current career, which is community development, asset-based community development, race equity training, reconciliation. I currently work for an African American woman who is absolutely amazing and has taught me so much more than a typical friendship would avail. So I am grateful for that experience. And in my learning and growing, I've learned quite a bit about my privilege. And most recently, I learned quite a bit about the privilege of my children, who are biracial, because I kept my word to my grandmother. And my son came home and said, "Mom, I gotta tell you something." And I'm thinking, what could it be? And he said, "I got into a fight with the neighbor boy." And I said, "What do you mean fight?" He said it was a physical altercation with the neighbor boy. And then he confessed to me that it was actually the third fight that they had been in. He didn't tell me prior because he thought he could handle it, but it got a little out of control, so he thought he would bring it to my attention. And I asked him where it was taking place, and he said that it was happening on the school bus. So of course I was determined to find out why a school bus driver is letting this happen. So I called the bus company And because I could give them the date and times, they were able to pull video, which I was not expecting. I didn't know that the buses had video. I was told on that call that all of that video is completely confidential and that the video would be forwarded to the school and that I should follow up with them. Well, much to my surprise, when that video was pulled, my son, who is biracial but is very, very light-skinned, the boy that he was having an altercation with was an African-American boy. I received a call from the bus company, and the woman basically told me everything that was on the video, and that the boy who my son had been in an altercation with was a very aggressive black boy. And I thought, wow, well, you know, she clearly can tell from speaking to me on the phone maybe that I'm a white woman, and my son looks very white on video for sure. And she thought she was helping me out by giving me all of this completely, allegedly confidential information. And so I let her continue on as long as I possibly could stand it, and then I dropped the bomb that my son was not white. And she proceeded to backtrack for days. And so in some of those experiences, I've learned a lot. And I also feel like it is my responsibility personally and collectively as white, privileged people, that we do our part to grow, to understand, and to develop authentic relationships with people who don't look like us, because that is the only way that we will learn, that is the only way that we will grow, and that is the only way that reconciliation can happen. And so it is my opinion that building relationships with other women and other cultures will always win out. And maybe as women, we can set aside some of our stereotypes about other women, because on top of race is then the stereotypes that women set for other women. We say things like white people who tan are trying to be black. We say things like black women with blonde hair are trying to be white. And we put women in categories and in boxes that aren't fair and probably not true. Recently I was reading a book called Disunity in Christ by Christina Cleveland, and she talks quite a bit about the psychology of how we put people, cultures, and races and religion in boxes. And we then create some us's and some them's. And so I think that the amazing thing that this project has the ability to do is maybe lessen some of the us's and some of the them's, and create some boxes with we's in them, which I think is really amazing, and I'm excited for it.